I have created havoc for Apple Music. And for those of you who don't know how Apple Music works, how it works is you pick anywhere between 10 and 20 songs that you enjoy listening to. And then Apple Music will kick into gear some kind of algorithm that will then predict what other kinds of songs you like to listen to, and it will start to cull and category music for you based on those 20 preferences. Now, I have thrown off Apple Music because I have eclectic taste in music. What does that mean? Now, don't tease me or judge me for what I'm about to tell you, but some of my favorite artists include Sting, Kenny Loggins, Eric Clapton, Christopher Cross, anything else we might listen to on yacht rock, but I'm also really into Dua Lipa, and I like Demi Lovato, and I'm a big fan of Slim Shady. I know that's not his real name, but I know it's what he's referred to. And there aren't many people in the world that enjoy listening to Christopher Cross and Slim Shady. And it throws off Apple Music to the point where they start picking music that they think I'm going to like, and they're wrong. Because all they've done is categorized me as an algorithm. Now, it's not limited to music. You're going to learn a couple things about how I shop, which predominantly is online. So I'll give you one example. Shorts. I wear 3 companies of shorts, 3 brands. I wear Vineyard Vine shorts, Banana Republic shorts, and Amazon brand shorts. Why do I like the Amazon brand shorts? They fit me the best. Why do I like the Vineyard Vines brand shorts? Because they're the most comfortable. And why do I like the Banana Republic shorts? Well, because they're economical and they look the nicest. But most people who buy Vineyard Vines don't necessarily buy Amazon brand when it comes to clothing. And it throws off the algorithms that all of these companies and social media have done, that by finding one particular angle, you have thus determined what your preferences are, what you like, and all that goes with it. Some people like spicy food, some people like bland food, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we start to hew out a particular corner of where someone belongs because of a particular feeling, or a particular type, or a particular preference, we do a disservice to humanity. We are all humans. We are all complex and complicated. And we are not algorithms. And while social media sites and other advertisements might get it right some of the time, or even a lot of the time, when it comes to more complex issues, I do not want to be an algorithm, and you shouldn't be an algorithm either. For the last 3 weeks in particular, but really over the last 2 decades, this idea of cornering people based on one idea and where they belong has come to a head when we deal with the topic of Israel. Bring up the topic of Israel among 60 and 70-year-olds, and they will remember a time, perhaps even the 80 and 90-year-olds as well, that Israel was just infantile, barely alive, couldn't even survive, when people were hungry on the streets, when its first war of independence, followed by its Six-Day War in 67, was nothing short of a miracle, and then the surprise attack on Yom Kippur and all the terrorist attacks that questioned its very legitimacy and identity. And for that generation who remember the foundation of the state as a safe haven for Jews, in the wake of the worst moment in the 2,000-year history of the Jews, that being the Holocaust, Israel is nothing short of a miracle and a safe haven for the Jewish people. But if you are someone who is 20 years old, or 30 years old, even 45 years old, and you were born in a time after the Yom Kippur War. And when you started to develop your morality and your compass and the things that mattered to you, and you saw the role of Israel change from that of being oppressed to that of being one of power, you started to see Israel in a different light. And this has created a divide generationally, so that people in their 40s today who were shaped about a love for Zion, a love for Israel and Zionism, but also are married passionately, as they should be and we are proud of who they are and what they stand for, as liberal Americans or Jews, comes to a clash. The New York Times wrote an article about it this week, about people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and even some in their 20s who are having a fantastic identity crisis. What is their identity crisis? I'm Jewish. I love Israel. It's a homeland for me as a Jew. When people were marching in Charlottesville and saying, the Jews will not replace us, it was comforting to know that I have a homeland. When I was bullied, one of the people interviewed in the article said, and lines were used from South Park about Jew gold, I felt comfort in knowing I had a place to go if I ever was the target of such viral anti-Semitism, and that being of Israel. But at the same time, many of these same people who feel that way have aligned themselves with Black Lives Matter, with Stopping Asian Hate, with gender equality, and a whole host of other liberal topics. And now comes a war in Gaza. And people think, just like Apple Music or some algorithm on social media, that you are automatically categorized in the for or against category based on how you once believed or what you marched for or what you celebrated. The world cannot seem to understand that I, for one, and I think I represent a pretty healthy dose of people, can march with Black Lives Matter, can rally against Stopping Asian Hate, and at the same time support the homeland of Israel and the innocent civilians who are being targeted by aimless, indiscriminate rockets, 4,000 in 10 days. It didn't jive for people. One is a liberal cause, and one is not a liberal cause. One is about victims, and one is about the oppressor. How can we make these two things meet? And my argument is, you are comparing apples and bowling balls. I can proudly listen to Dua Lipa and to Sting and to Christopher Cross and be happy with my music choices. I can wear Amazon shorts and Vineyard Vine shorts and be comfortable in what I am displaying on my body. And I do not have to be put into a corner when I believe in passionate liberal causes, but at the same time believe that Israel has every right to defend itself against terrorists. To me, this is something that has come to the forefront that all of us need to be better equipped in articulating and in arguing. So for me, it's not hard to like two kinds of music. It's not hard to wear two styles of clothing. And for me, it's not hard at all to feel a sense of genuine and sincere empathy for Palestinian children ranging in age from 2 to 22, who were born to their second or third generation of a conflict that they had nothing to do with, of a set of realities that is put upon them that they inherited, and that isn't fair in some ways and isn't right in other ways. Yeah, I have real empathy for them. I have empathy for Palestinians who are used as pawns and human shields within Gaza without much choice. I have real empathy for them. Not hyperbole, it's real. My heart hurts for them. But I also have upset and anger for the ancestors of those Palestinians who made conscious choices of refusing peace offers, of denying recognition of a state of Israel, of engaging and embracing horrible terror like suicide bombing on a daily basis that created some of the reality that their children and grandchildren are now inheriting. I can have both of those feelings. It's not complicated. I can wear a cloak of Zionism proudly. And I could say that I am a proud Zionist who loves the state of Israel, while Bibi Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. And I can make the exact same statement when Ehud Barak is the prime minister of Israel, or Ehud Olmert is the prime minister of Israel, or Ariel Sharon is the prime minister of Israel, or Yitzhak Rabin is the prime minister of Israel. Meaning, my love for Israel doesn't change one iota based on who the prime minister is. My love isn't that fickle. My love is committed for Israel. Now, there might be things about each and every one of those leaders that I don't like or disagree with, but my love doesn't change. And here's a little shock for all of you. I feel the same way about America. This land has been a blessing to me and my family and to all of you. It has been a blessing for the Jewish people for the last almost 400 years. And I would give my life for this country. I say that quickly without thinking much, but I've thought about it, and I mean it. That for the democracy and safety of this country, I would give my life. I would also do the same for Israel. But my love for America is exactly the same under the presidency of Joe Biden as it was for Donald Trump. And for those of you who don't follow me on social media, you know that I have a preference of one over the other, pretty passionately. And my love for this country is the same under George W. Bush as it was under Bill Clinton, as it was under George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan. The love for the country doesn't change even if we disagree passionately with some of the policies of the people leading the country. Our love and patriotism isn't contingent of who holds occupancy in the White House. For me, I can be frustrated in that algorithm that points to Palestinian operatives, instigators, who proudly promote a concept of BDS, which stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions from the state of Israel. And these happen in institutions, in countries and organizations, and especially in the academic forum. And they target on the tiny state of Israel. But I am aghast at the double standard because I don't hear a peep. I hear deafening silence when it comes to war crimes in Beijing, China. I didn't hear people marching or looking to divest or looking for sanctions when the brutal regime of Assad killed 500,000 people, 500,000 people, in a brutal civil war in Syria in the most disgusting way, including using chemical warfare against every treaty that has ever been signed since Geneva. I don't hear people looking to draw the same parallels when it comes to the horrible and cruel acts of North Korea or Iran as the largest statewide sponsor of terror and continuing to enrich uranium, just to focus on boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel, and silence on all of these other actions. I can hold a truth that makes me well up with tears when I see a Gazan mother who I think is like any other mother in the world, who is searching frantically for milk for her baby, and they don't have electricity to even keep the milk cold. It could spoil in the heat. And how is this mother going to feed her little baby? Because there is no milk for her, she has no money, she is impoverished, and there's no refrigeration for the milk when they find it. If that doesn't make your heart ache, what does? But at the very same time that my heart hurts and my eyes well up with tears for that mother, and there are way too many of them, thousands upon thousands. I am allowed, as you should be too, to be baffled at how Hamas and Gaza seem to have billions, with a B, billions of dollars to create terror infrastructure through tunneling systems that Israel refers to as the Metro. That was an elaborate labyrinth that went all the way through parts of Gaza City, connecting sometimes even into Israel. How they were able to launch 4,000 rockets in the course of 10 days. These rockets aren't free. Someone had to pay for these rockets. But they didn't have the money for milk, for babies, for schools, for education. You can be baffled by that. You could say something in that algorithm doesn't work, and we are allowed to look at that and to say, something's wrong here. Something doesn't add up. It doesn't seem to make sense, like Vineyard Vines and Amazon brand being bought by the same person. If I felt, as I do, passionately about the freedom of the press, I would be really upset if I were from Al Jazeera or the Associated Press and my offices were pummeled to the ground by an Israeli airstrike. I would be upset. I would be upset that my staff was endangered and upset that the war was brought literally to their typewriters who are reporting the stories. What I don't understand is why there has been international condemnation focused on the state of Israel for taking that proven headquarters of Hamas and their intelligence infrastructure out. And there has been not one moment from the AP or Al Jazeera chastising Hamas for endangering their journalists and knowing willingly that they put one of their headquarters in what was a safe haven, a base like kids playing tag, where the journalists were located. Why aren't people calling out Hamas for saying, how dare you endanger our staff, as opposed to looking to Israel and saying, why did you bomb that location? It's nonsensical. It doesn't make any logic. We're going to blame those who take out the root of the terror, as opposed to those who made the terror in that place that's supposed to offer freedom and safety. It's supposed to be a force field. It's like someone saying that we're going to focus on the medicine that hurts somebody in eradicating cancer and not be upset at the cancer that is caused by people smoking cigarettes. How do we just ignore the role of the cigarette in this process and focus only on the medicine and what it does to eradicate the cancer? It's the wrong way in which we look at it. And when people who hold up the flag proudly of liberalism in America, the likes of Linda Sarsour, who proudly claimed last week, you can support Israel and you can be a liberal, but you can't be both, is not only desperately naive, but totally wrong. It is naive to say that, and it is wrong to say that. And where these two issues intersect in the most blatant way is that there is no more liberal country in the Middle East than in Israel. Israel is a place that aligns with so many liberal values. Israel is the only true democracy in the Middle East. Israel's Supreme Court has men and women on it. No other country in the Middle East has that. Israel's Supreme Court has Jews and Muslims, Arabs and Israelis on that very court. Israel participates in the Miss Israel pageant every year. A few years ago, the winner was an Ethiopian Jew named Titi Ayanow. This last year, it was Rana Razlan, an Arab who represented the state of Israel in the Miss Universe pageant. An Arab? An Ethiopian Jew? Aren't these liberal bona fides that we believe in? Aren't these pillars that we can hold on to? In the Knesset of Israel, when it was first founded, women served on the Knesset, which was unheard of in 1948. A prime minister who was female in 1972. A speaker of the Knesset in 2009, Dalia Itzik. And the Knesset today is a microcosm of Israel. Right wing and left wing, secular Israelis, religious Haredi Israelis and Jews, Muslims, Christians, men and women, straight and gay, all represented in the 120 seats in the Israeli Knesset. When a national disaster hits somewhere in our world, Israel is always the first to respond, whether it's in Turkey or in Haiti or the Philippines or Nepal or you name it. Whatever the disaster is, from tsunami to hurricane to earthquake, Israel responds with field hospitals, support, and food for those countries, regardless of their voting record or its political views. Each and every time. Israel believes as a founding ethic in universal health care for everyone in the country. Does that sound like a liberal talking point to all of you? It does to me. Israel is the standard bearer now in vaccinations for COVID. Much of what we're following today is based on what Israel has done for its population and affording the vaccines for everyone, not charging everyone, and seeing the results of a real herd immunity. All done by Israel, right in line with liberal values. Israel is a country that for any of its citizens that is having trouble conceiving or having children will absorb every single shekel of the price of in vitro fertilization or any other of the needs that are necessary towards procreation. Now, for those in this country who have faced that battle, you will know that that can cost anywhere between $20,000 and $90,000 per child. Israel says we're not going to charge you for that. That's an ethic that we believe in your right to create life. And Israel supports that for all of its members. Sounds like a liberal talking point to me too. And last but not least, and there's a long list, I'm only mentioning some of the top. Way before Bill Clinton was even thinking about running for president, Israel allowed openly gay men and women and transgender people to serve in its military openly. I say before Bill Clinton because if you remember, Bill Clinton was going to remove that ban and wasn't successful and introduced Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And far before that came around, Israel was saying if you are openly gay, you can serve in our military. It's not an exemption for you. Sounds pretty liberal to me too. So people who are from the camp of Linda Sarsour or from the camp of a college campus that is being indoctrinated in one angle or the other, do not be told that you can either or. You can and. It is not one or the other in who you are. You can have both. If you want to wear Vineyard Vines and you want to wear Amazon and you want to wear Banana Republic, God bless. If you want to listen to Kenny Loggins and Barry Manilow and Drake, God bless. That is your taste and your prerogative. And if we want to believe that we can have empathy and compassion for those Palestinians who are suffering under circumstances that they did not create, we should advocate for their welfare, which I proudly do. But I can also say unequivocally that that does not categorize me as someone who will ignore the violations of Hamas and the terrorism that they create and launching rockets indiscriminately into my homeland and targeting the innocent civilians of my people. I won't tolerate that, and you shouldn't either. And you shouldn't be afraid to speak out against it because it might paint you as a liberal or a conservative, or as a Trumpy or as a Biden, or as a Republican or a Democrat. That is absurdity. We are more thoughtful, more complex, more complicated than that, and we can handle it. And don't get sucked into a terrible narrative that just isn't true. What's happening on the Temple Mount right now is complicated. What's happening in Sheikh Jarrah right now is complicated. What's happening right now with issues of the Palestinian elections, it's complicated. But what isn't complicated is Hamas's mission, which was articulated loudly and clearly yesterday when they claimed victory because they claimed that all of those that sought peace with Israel as a result of the Abraham's Accords were now defunct, and there's no recognition of the validity of creating a relationship with the state of Israel. Meaning, Hamas wasn't doing this fight for those of its brethren on the Temple Mount, or for those in Sheikh Jarrah, or over the Palestinian election. They were doing it to kill Jews and to make sure that Israel wouldn't exist. That doesn't sound like a liberal value to me. That doesn't sound like something that I'd want to march in favor of. That doesn't sound like something I would rally for. And if you are, we should talk. Because I want to question some of those beliefs and values that you hold. Just because we can march for one doesn't mean we are negated and canceled out from the other. All of us have that opportunity. And here's the most important part of what I'm going to tell you today. Just like I shared with Peyton and Tyler. The blessing that God gives the Jewish people is for us to actuate, to make happen. It's meaningless if we don't. We got to make it happen. And when the fight is not only happening in Gaza and the West Bank, but it's happening on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and on the streets of Times Square, you are then deputized as soldiers in this fight. And your job is simple. Don't walk away from the fight. Don't call names. Don't say, you're an idiot, you're stupid, I hate you, you're an anti-Semite. It's going to get you nowhere fast. But there are ways that you can offer the same complexity and data and details and articulating how it is that we will address this phenomenon and say A plus B might equal C and B plus A might equal C, but C plus B doesn't always equal A. They're not the same. And if people can't see that or are unwilling to see that, help them see it. Don't sit on your hands. Write letters to papers. Write a letter to Bernie Sanders' office. Write a letter to Ilhan Omar's office, to AOC's office. Write a letter to Barbara McCollum's office, to Rashida Tlaib's office, and tell them, how can you stand for the rights of some and not the rights of others? Isn't that racism at its purest form? How can you advocate for the Palestinians and advocate against the Jews? Write a letter. It will take you 10 minutes. You can do it online. Call their office. Don't call them names. Just express your dismay. I'm upset. I'm dissatisfied. I'm hurt. This bothers me as an American and as a Zionist. Whether you're Jewish or not is irrelevant. You are part of making this difference. Don't let anyone turn you into an algorithm. It's not only beneath each of us, it's beneath the complicated way in which God crafted all of our identities. And to turn us into an algorithm is to really rebuke the way that God made us in a complex, complicated, and holy manner. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to continue our service, page 184. The cantor leads us.